it is arguable, and I've seen this debate, but it's arguable that it's actually more important than anything else. And it seems counterintuitive. And I know one of the questions you've asked me before, and it's probably in here, but I'm going to answer it now, is like the most counterintuitive reality about running your business successfully, doing well, is recognizing that the pre-construction is arguably more important than the execution. The execution is just simply the end result of you doing all the work you do.
Hey, what phase of a construction project is most important to profitability? I'll give you a hint. It's not the construction phase. Are you being held back by some of the most common limiting beliefs and fears that keep entrepreneurs stuck? What is the, quote, monkey bar problem that entrepreneurs need to solve in order to grow their business? How do you transition your construction business from being stressed out and not making enough money to having complete freedom of time? Well, that's what this episode of the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com is all about. My name is Todd Dawalt. That's spelled D-A-W-A-L-T. I'm your host, and here at constructionleadingedge.com, we're all about helping construction business owners have more time, more freedom, more impact, and more wealth by systematizing your construction business. And here's what you're going to get from this interview with Mikhail Gannage, owner of Gannage Design and Construction in Templeton, California. First up, we talked about what Mikhail learned from a former Top Gun pilot who now owns a winery. Very valuable lesson. We talk about the limiting beliefs and fears that Mikhail had to overcome in order to turn his business around. And there's a pretty good chance these are some of the same things that are holding you back. We talk about the phase of the construction project that is most important to profitability, and it's not the construction phase. We dig into the monkey bar problem that entrepreneurs have to solve in order to grow their business, what Mikhail did to turn his business around, the specific steps he took, the systems he put in place, what worked for him, and how he did it, and what the results were. So a lot of great stuff here. Mikhail's a good friend of mine, and he's a member of our CEO Alliance, and he has a lot of great information to share with you today. So without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Mikhail Gannage, owner of Gannage Design and Construction from Templeton, California. Enjoy. Mikhail, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing today? This is your second time on the podcast, at least your second time.
I believe so.
I'll reference your other episode later on. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about your background because you talked in depth about that on the previous episode. But tell us a little bit about your business, the name of your company, where you're located, and what kind of work you do.
Yeah, and I'll try to be brief, but I own Gannage Design and Construction. We're located on the central coast of California, which is San Luis Obispo County, if you're familiar. We focus our energy on unique design build projects that require special attention, not just the construction detail, but specifically a careful handling of our clients. That's what we do.
And tell us a little bit more about the type of projects you're focused on right now.
Predominantly remodels where we're taking a home pretty much completely apart and rethinking it, reimagining the home, reimagining that living space. We focus our attention first and foremost more on the living experience that the client wants, and then let us interpret how to get there. It may be simple things like, where do you want to drink your cup of coffee in the morning? And is that an important thing to you? Looking at their lifestyle and helping them reshape that beyond just the building. And so typical home might end up being, 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, and it ends up being twice that big when we're done. Oftentimes there's a unique story. There's an inheritance. There's maybe it was your parents' home, or it was your husband's, and now you're going to move into the home he grew up in. But how do we make this your home, but also still the home that he grew up in? How do we do that? It's very careful handling of that and preservation of certain memories. So.
Got it. So let's talk about your story. How did you get started in business?
Well, I've been around construction my whole life. My grandfather and uncles are all contractors. My father was a real estate broker and developer. They all had a profound influence on me for sure. I spent a lot of time learning about sales and marketing from my father. As a young man, my father sent me to work with a large construction firm based in San Luis Obispo, California. That's near us. And I learned a lot about the trades and business of construction with them. Then I obtained my contractor's license and spent a few years working primarily alone and subcontracting, just really getting my feet wet in that. In the 90s, I was a young husband and father, still honestly searching for my unique abilities. So I returned to school. I got a degree in automation engineering. Spent some years up in Sacramento, California, designing industrial robotics. It was there that I really learned a lot more about processes and the value of good processes. And I gained a real passion for a process-oriented business management. After rebuilding our home there in Sacramento and actually Carmichael area, we returned to Los Osos, where I grew up, and I reestablished Gannage Design Construction in 2000. And that was the beginning of a journey of, a development for Gannage Design Construction, where I wanted to do it differently. I wanted to see us go about things different than others. And what was that going to look like? How was I going to do that? So.
And what type of work did you start with 20 plus years ago? What kind of projects were you doing?
Well, I'd just say one of my favorite clients was White Investments. She was managing 30 rental homes in the San Luis Obispo area, and it was a mess. She had someone who was just milking the thing, and I came in and told her, it's going to cost you a little more in the first couple of years, but if you let me, I will completely overhaul each one of these buildings and make them a lot easier to be maintained, a lot more cost effective. And we did that. And that was really a great cutting my teeth, and then started to get into more remodels and some new builds. And I would say my early career was dominated mostly by smaller remodel projects, bathrooms and things like that, and some home renovation. And then I started to get into some residential, and I have done some TI. When I was learning the trades, I did a lot of TI work and commercial work, but I never really had a passion for the TI work and commercial. I really liked the relationship, so I never went after commercial work, even though I'd had some experience in it. So
that leads me to a question. If somebody came to you and said, Mikhail, I want to start a business. I love construction, but I'm not sure if I should go after commercial. I know I love buildings, but should I do commercial? Should I do residential? How would you highlight the differences in those two worlds, and what would you ask them, or what would you tell them to help them pick the right side to go after? Because they're very different.
They are, and you know probably more than I do about that, but I would definitely say that the difference is the people. Residential is much more relationship oriented. There's going to be relationships no matter what, and I have a real passion for that. It's going to be people oriented, but in residential, there's no exception. You really have to be paying attention to your clients. You really have to be getting in touch with what they're really wanting in their lifestyle. You're not looking at lifestyle when you're looking at a commercial building. That's not the focal point, and even the mindset and the people you're working with. And so that's if you would prefer to be focused more on the business and be hands off, and it excites you to do huge projects, really bigger buildings, bigger, than go after the commercial. If it excites you to see people light up and be so excited about the spaces that you're able to create for them, and watching them have these memories and knowing that you're going to be responsible for creating a place for their family memories, that's the kind of thing you want to connect with. And it's messier. I will tell you that it's messier. Residential gets that way. But yeah, that's what I would tell you. Focus on that aspect.
Yeah. I tell people, like, look, I've done a few $100 million worth of commercial projects, and I have never sat across a lady's dining room table on a Sunday afternoon and had her cry about the amount of dust on her windows. But that has happened on a residential project. There are a lot more tears, a lot more emotions on the residential side. So keep that in mind if you're wondering which way you should go. Another follow-up question. So you did industrial robotics design. What, if anything, transferred from your early years doing that type of work? What transferred into construction? Because they seem like very different worlds. I'm curious if there's anything that carried forward from that to what you're doing now.
Well, interestingly enough, I was reminded of just how much this was important when I listened to a speech recently by a Top Gun instructor and pilot who now owns a winery in our area. Why on earth would a Top Gun instructor and pilot end up owning a winery? What is the connection between those two? And a similar answer that I'm going to give you is what he gave. Nobody who flies a decent plane, and he kind of went into the history of aeronautics, and I won't go there, but like some early planes did not require so much process. But most, if not all the planes today, and if I butcher this, and pilots out there, you can correct me, but there is so much involved in flying a plane. You have a very clear written process that you must follow. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it. You'd have to do it. You follow that. That's the only way you're going to not miss something and not make mistakes. And I think the story of the B-52 is actually the one that highlights that reality, because I think I get that right. But there was one of the first planes that they basically were going to reject it because they said it's too complicated to fly, and they said, "Oh, bad idea. We can't do this," until they recognized the need to have a written process. The same thing happens in industrial robotics. It is multi-million dollars, just unbelievable amount of complexity. If you are not following a written plan and process, you're not even get close. You are going to crash and burn like that plane. And I feel like in construction, there's just far too many of us who either grew up in it and just kind of come at it lackadaisical, or, hey, we got out of high school and that's what I like to do, or, I didn't go to college, or I did, and I'm just going to go into construction. And you approach it not recognizing that this is a business that is plenty complicated and has processes required of it for you to actually succeed. Can you limp along? And that's the sad truth. There are many builders and contractors who limp along, and clients who experience a limp along experience with their contractor. And we wanted to set that apart and go, wait a second, that's not true. This is very complex, and we can actually be the easy button for our clients if we will learn to apply these processes, smooth out the wrinkles that can be wrinkled. It doesn't have to be as crazy. You don't have to fly by the seat of your pants. And so seeing that and applying that was key. And, that was the infancy. And I'll admit at that point, that's what I wanted to do. But on a construction level, I really wasn't sure how to. And I'll admit that's where you came into play. That's where Construction Leading Edge really came into play, was realizing and helping me connect the dots of how to put together what I knew how to apply one world, and actually started, you would say things and I would go, oh my goodness, okay, now I get it. It was like an interpretation between one world to another world. And then I'm like, oh yeah, of course that makes sense. So,
yeah. I'm curious, what do you think? I like the way you said there are a lot of contractors who are kind of limping along, and they're really smart, really hardworking, have big visions, but they're stuck. What And I remember a conversation you and I had a few years ago where you felt stuck. What are some limiting beliefs that lead people or keep people in that limping along and stuck mode? What do you think?
Fear, pride, leading to self-deception. You're an incredible tradesman. You're far better than I have been or I probably ever will be. But that does not mean that you're running a successful business serving your clients to your best ability. And you have to come to the point where you accept that you don't know what you don't know, which means that even though you've sat down and processed so carefully how you're going to do the best you can, because that's who you are, you're going to do the best, you care a lot, but you don't know what you don't know, and you're afraid of that reality. And your pride has you convinced that you do know enough that no one can really explain it to you. It is what it is. It's got to be the way it's got to be. You're wrong. I was wrong. I was definitely wrong. And I really appreciated, Todd, that you patiently kept thumping on me going, no, I need you to think about that again. That's not actually correct. And actually it comes back to a fear issue. You're afraid of this. And I remember one of the conversations we had was like, okay, Mikhail, fine. You're concerned. You're afraid. Let's go down that dark hole. Let's go down it. How bad could it get if you did what I'm asking you to do and you went down that dark hole and it looked like that? How bad is it going to be? Can you live with that? And I realized, yes, if it really was that bad, I can live with that. Is it? And then I had to ask myself, if the potential for a better life and a better way of doing things for myself, my clients, for my employees, if it's even remotely possible, if what Todd is telling me could actually happen, is it worth the risk of trying what I don't know and not sure will work? And you got to make that leap of faith. You know, it is a leap of faith. You have to believe because you don't see it. You're not really sure that it'll work.
What were some of the things you believed a few years ago that you now realize were not true? What were some of
that's good.
The limiting beliefs that were holding you back? That
is a great question. I believed that there were certain things that I was really the best at, that nobody in my business and certainly within my sphere could I find who could really do it better. So that meant I had to do it. That was definitely not true. Also, I had the assumption that growth was going to make me busier because everything about my understanding of growth was going to make me busier. And I had to come to a complete paradigm shift and recognize, and that was when I read the book 10X is Easier Than 2X, that pointed to some powerful concepts. And I would strongly encourage the reading of that book, as well as actually the couple books that come before it. But ironically, I read that first, and it referred to, who, not how. And so I backed up and I read that one too. And it referred to the gap and the gain. And I read that one. And so those concepts are in there. So in some ways I do say, sure, read 10X is easier than 2X first. But the reality is that forces you to look at a world that you can't handle on your own and accept that you may not be the right person for all these different things to be done. And as soon as you're willing to let go, which is scary, and it still sometimes scares me. That's the honest truth. I'm just like, this is unbelievable. There's no way I could wrap my hands around all this that's going on that I put in motion. Yes, I put it all in motion, but there's no way I could pull it all back. It's just, there's a lot going on. I'm very much counting on the A team that I am thankful to have put together. So, I would say that's the best answer I got.
Yeah, and I think there's a belief that, and you've gotten past this, but there's a belief that if I can't get my arms around it, then it's too big.
Right.
And if I'm uncomfortable, then that's bad. So when that happens, we as entrepreneurs, we become the bottleneck because we're like, things are getting a little wobbly. I'm uncomfortable. So I need to not grow. But what I heard you say was that you believe that growing would mean you would be busier. And this is something I hear a lot, that, well, I know if I hire people, it's going to be more stress, more hours. But I'm like, well, no. If you hire the wrong people,
yes,
the wrong way, it'll be that way. But what has been your experience? You've grown, you've changed, you've taken on bigger projects, you've made some key hires. What have you found to be true about growth?
That was pivotal for me. So I'm gonna tell those of you who are just saying, Mikhail, no, I've hired and I fired and you're just wrong. And I hear you because I was there. I told Todd that. Just because in my history, I've cycled through subbing it all out, having a large crew, back and forth, and trying to manage it all myself. But never did I start letting go of some of the key elements that I needed to in the business. There was always a cap, and I was it. I was always the cap to the whole thing. And I couldn't let go of certain things that I identified with, that had brought me to where I am, that I'd white-knuckled my way to this place where I've survived, through 2009. And I got through it on my own, and I made it through. And the last thing I'm going to do is do something stupid and let someone else trash my business or tank me, right? And those fears and those concerns, you're just locked into it. You're firmly convinced. And I was there, and I had to let go. And yes, since this paradigm shift, I have, the who, not how concept. I spent a lot more time thinking about who rather than how to do something. And I'm learning, and I'm still growing in that who, focus on my who's. But the first thing I did was find a who, like a contractor staffing source, to help me. Ironically, a who finder, I wasn't even good. I had to acknowledge that I'm a lousy finder of who, not good at that. And so I got them to help me find who. And that was a huge shift, because then I realized the problem was I was a lousy hire. I didn't know how to hire people. So I found someone. I found a who to help me hire better. That was pivotal. Then I started hiring, some better people. And that's not a guarantee. It's not perfect, but it certainly was a huge shift. Enough of a momentum shift in the right hiring that set things in motion for having the right team players in place. But then it also shifted. That's not the end of it. I had to realize I was reinventing myself. I was stripping away part of who I thought I was, and I had to realize there's some things that I identified with as myself, and I had to ask myself, is that really me? Is that what I love? Or is it just that I have my sense of identity in it because I've done it well in the past? But it doesn't mean that's really who I am. And I had to accept letting some of that stuff go. And actually realizing the joy of watching people I've hired, specifically because we looked at, they love something. They're really good at it. They really enjoy this. Watching them thrive and blossom because I've given them the opportunity to do what they love doing. And I thought I was okay at it. I thought I was doing well. But when I watched them, I went, wow. They really got it. And once that momentum started, now it becomes a thrill to hire people to do those things and just let it go. And just go, oh my gosh, look at you, you're a rock star. So now that's what I do. I just spend my time coaching these people who love doing what they're doing, and I'm backing them up, and I'm making sure they have what they need, and they're just enjoying doing it. And if I need help, then I hire somebody else, because I don't want to put that kind of time into it, or I find myself frustrated with a particular task that I've given to myself. And if I'm frustrated, and as I've learned, if I start procrastinating on it, then maybe that's something I should give to somebody else. And so I do, and they love it. And I'm like, wow, that was awesome, So that was that journey. And so, that's where I'm living now in it. But it's a journey, and it takes time, and it's not perfect, but yeah, it's well worth it.
Yeah. We've used the term letting go a few times. And one of the best analogies that I've heard recently for this is it's sort of like when you're on the monkey bars, like the horizontal ladder and you're swinging.
Mm-hmm.
When you grab on first, and then you get with your right hand, and then you get your left hand on the next one, and then what? You got to let go to swing forward. It's just like climbing a rope it's half climbing, but also it's half letting go. So you have to let go to move forward.
Yeah.
And I think this is where people get so trapped, is this fear of letting go. And there are all these fears and beliefs that are keeping people stuck. But on the other side of letting go the right way, hiring the right people the right way, there's a lot of freedom. And I think this is a huge difference between businesses that stay stagnant and stuck versus businesses that grow, is that when entrepreneurs realize the freedom that comes from letting go and bringing people in, and they see people as an investment, that business will grow. But when the entrepreneur sees people as a cost, and they see people as a risk, and they see new people as somebody who's just going to cause me more stress and more aggravation and cause me to be busier, just one more person to tell what to do, they stay stuck. And those people just need to let go of the monkey bar. And it's really uncomfortable, but I think that's a good way to think about the entrepreneurial journey, is every time you swing forward, you're going to have to let go of the monkey bar, and it's going to be uncomfortable. That's the nature of it.
Yeah.
So let's go back a few years. We've been working together several years now. It was probably 2021, I think, when we started. Yeah. So what were some of the challenges and issues that the primary challenges and issues you were dealing with that led you to reach out to us initially?
Well, I think I touched on it before, but it was me, and me. Anybody who's in this situation, it doesn't start by squaring off with yourself and looking the guy in the mirror and say, stop pointing at your subcontractors, your accountant, your employees, your project manager, and start pointing at the guy in the mirror, because that's where the problem is. And if you don't believe that and you don't understand that, then you're not going to get anywhere until you start there. I'm that bold enough to say, until you realize that the problem starts with you. So the problem was with me, and I didn't understand. I knew enough to know that there was a lot I didn't know, and I needed help. I needed help because as much as you and I could look in the mirror, ironically, there's things we can't see when we look in a mirror. You can't look into your own mind and see your the problems that are holding you up, the fallacies that you're believing, the misunderstandings about what is actually true or what is the right way to do things. You can't see that in a mirror. But interestingly enough, when you have a coach look into your eyes and he knows the right questions and he asks the right questions, he can see those things and point them out to you. So you can now look at yourself for the first time, because he's going to honestly point that out. And that was done for me, to see the things that I needed to see and ask me the hard questions. Are you really willing to let go of that? Are you really willing to rethink that and start making actionable steps towards changing? Because you've come to us, and I remember that you've come to us with these external requirements. I need to make money. I'm tired, and all of us, I remember that's where you start. Those are those, I really like to be better organized. Sometime I'd like to be able to retire, whatever that goal is. Those are all external. The irony is the solution starts internally. And that's where I need to because as I mentioned, I'd been in a process-oriented world, but I had no idea that I was holding myself back There was these things that I knew how to do, but I didn't even know how to apply them yet. I wasn't tapping into my own unique abilities because I was in my own way.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story I heard. A guy was in his house and the power went out and he dropped his car keys and he was searching around on the ground, but the power was out, the lights were off, so he couldn't see. But he noticed when he looked outside that the street lights were on. So he went outside and was down on his hands and knees looking around. And his neighbor came up and said, hey man, what are we looking for? And he said, I dropped my keys. Oh, okay. So the guy starts looking around. And after a few minutes, he said, so where did you drop your keys? Were they in front of your car, behind your car? And he said, oh no, I dropped my keys in my living room. And the neighbor said, why the heck are we out here looking for them when they're in the house? And he said, oh, well, it's much easier to see out here because of the light. I can't see inside. So I think one of those beliefs, when we're thinking about this through the filter of what are the beliefs holding people back, one of the beliefs is the problems are out there. Therefore, the solutions are out there. And if you believe that, you'll be looking for tactics and strategies and hacks and software and things like that. You could spend decades looking for external solutions, but that will never solve the real problem, which is typically right here in between our ears. Hey guys, Todd here. If you own a custom home building or remodeling business, let me ask you a few questions. First, how often do you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about project details, financial issues, or something else about your business and you can't go back to sleep? Are you spending more than 10 hours a week working in the business, wearing multiple hats, putting out fires, and you feel like you can't work on your business as much as you want? Number 3, do you have enough documented systems and processes, or is it all in your head? Number 4, how good is your handoff of projects from the office to the field? Are you getting hammered by the just enough to start trap, doing just enough to start? And then lastly, do you feel stuck? Do you feel like you need to grow, but you're scared to? And you don't know how to do it? Maybe it feels like you need to hire, but you're afraid to make a mistake and you're worried you can't afford to hire somebody. Well, if any of that resonates with you, you're not alone. And if you want to make your business a source of more freedom and a source of less stress, and to systematize your construction business, and our team here at Construction Leading Edge has helped over 300 builders and remodelers systematize their business, and we can help you too. The first step is to schedule a call with my team by going to constructionleadingedge.com/apply. That's constructionleadingedge.com/APPLY, or you can send a text to this number, 877-755-2410 with the word apply. That's 877-755-2410. Just text the word apply and we'll get back to you. Now, let's get back to our episode. So let's talk about some of the good work you've done. You're a great implementer. You've taken a lot of the strategies and actually helped in creating and developing a lot of the strategies that we use. What are some of the most impactful changes that you've made, or what are some of the maybe the top 2 or 3 systems or processes that you've implemented that have had the most positive and profound impact for you?
I would say 3 things. Accountability, 10x is easier than 2x, and 5-minute action items. So accountability is at the heart of it. If you can't be accountable to your team, and if you can't find a coach to be accountable to, and you won't even be accountable to yourself, because there's a thing, like, hey, will you just be honest with yourself? We did benefit greatly from using what many of you know, the SMART goal method, insisting that something be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. But the key to that is accountability. So having that accountability, creating a culture of accountability, and we've talked about that a lot, but creating a culture of accountability within your organization And in my case, it was incredible to have that with also our CEO alliance. Just having that culture of accountability was powerful. And then for me, the 10X is easier than 2X. That concept required me to go beyond myself. And because it required me to go beyond myself, it challenged a whole lot of paradigms. All right. I had to stop trying to figure out how I could accomplish the goal and start focusing on finding the people who were uniquely qualified to do it. And I wasn't. And so I needed to do that. That really was a shift for me. All right. And then, 5-minute action item. Personally, I really benefited from a 5-minute action item. I tend to squirrel. I tend to get, I can talk about all this stuff all out here, but then, what are you going to do to make a measurable action forward? And I found that to be effective for myself and for team members. Go, okay, we've had this great conversation, but what are you going to do right now to move the needle? Right now, you got 5 minutes. Maybe it's just putting it on your Google Calendar and setting a requirement for yourself. Maybe set a note. Maybe you're going to make a text to somebody and say, hey, I just want to let you know, this is what I'm committing to do tomorrow. Will you make sure that I did it and I move forward on it? That's an actionable item. Maybe it's make that an appointment. You've been saying, I'm going to reach out to this and I'm going to do this. Go do it right now. You got 5 minutes. Make the appointment. That was a big deal.
Yeah, that's one thing that my kids get tired of hearing. My kids are all adults now, but I'll ask them, when's the only time something happens? Right now. Like nothing happens in the future. It always happens right now. Yeah. So get it done.
So I was going to mention, I mentioned accountability, but in all fairness, it's only fair to recognize that without the tool, what we refer to as the accountability chart, some of you are aware of that. If you're not, you can check out Construction Leading Edge and learn about that. But the accountability chart was a powerful tool for processing and documenting. And for us, it's a part of our process to actually do an annual review of the accountability chart. And for us, actually, during some of our really exponential growth periods from a staffing standpoint, we actually went through that like every quarter. We were rehashing where we're at with the accountability, making adjustments, right? And then just organizationally speaking, we use CoConstruct. There are others. Builder Trend's another one that's popular, but I strongly recommend some kind of an organizational structure for your project. That was key process change to organize our business that way and start submitting ourselves to those things that required from us, because now all of a sudden it's asking you to come outside your comfort zone, do things a little different. Things like, okay, keep all your communications. And CoConstruct was a process change. That really helped streamline and deal with problem resolution and stop wasting time in places we shouldn't. And then ultimately, from the CEO standpoint, the revenue maximizer is the other tool that I can't help mentioning. I know that there's been some debate about its validity, and I'm a strong proponent of it. If you're curious about how that works, you can ask around. But it honestly, as a CEO, the ultimate goal is you should probably be spending 30 minutes a month with it yourself. Now, I'll explain to you how to get there, but that's all. That's all I do. I don't spend very much time with it, but it's actually incredibly critical for myself. And then in my case, my chief operational officer also has to review it as well. Couldn't do what we're doing without it. So those are some key tools that I want to add in there. So,
yeah, I want to talk about a couple of those. When you went through your accountability chart exercise, what was something that you took off your plate, or maybe what was one thing you were most excited to get off your plate as you designed your business for 2 years in the future as you went through the accountability chart process?
For me personally, I was done estimating. I was like, I don't want to estimate no more. What are you doing? Why? How is it you, as the CEO, are still estimating? No. So that was. There was a lot of things. I'm at a point now where my accountability chart, there's a very tight refinement of what is my responsibility. Honestly, my business is at least 95% autonomous. So it does not really need me. So there's some very, very specific targeted areas that I spend time, and we can talk about that later too. But it's not having to estimate.
And I would say 80% of the people we work with, the CEOs we work with, they can't wait to get out of estimating, but a lot of them believe they have to do it. They struggle to let go of that monkey bar. What would you tell to those people who are like, man, I would love to get rid of estimating, but how can I possibly let go of that when it's so crucial or it's so risky or so fill in the blank? What would you say to them?
I would say that you're probably a lot like I was, and that what the hard truth is the way you estimate is poorly documented. You have not gotten your estimating down to a process, because it's actually not as complicated as we made it. I made it complicated. I made it personal. I made it where I was the only one who could do it well. But when it became a system that could be followed, reviewed, accountable to, refined, and improved, it wasn't such a big deal.
What's one of the unexpected positive side effects of having somebody else do estimating?
Well, it seems intuitive from my position, but like, you obviously are now you don't look so close at it. So if you want to, and certainly in my case, I'm actually to the point where I'm completely removed, but at first you're going to be, obviously you should be reviewing whoever's doing the estimating for you. But at that point, to be able to back away and look at it, honestly, you're going to be surprised yourself. You're going to see things and catch things that you wouldn't have caught if you had done the estimate. If that makes sense? Like, you're going to see it. You're going to watch somebody else do it. And it's just sort of human nature to be able to critique things that somebody else is doing a little better than your own work. And so we've had fewer errors because I'm not doing it, even though at first they were making mistakes that I didn't normally make. But we had a process of reviewing the estimate and being the second set of eyes. But then eventually I even documented that process. So I don't even review estimates anymore. That's not my job, is to look at estimates.
One thing I've heard from a few of our guys is that when they were doing estimating, they tended to get in a bidding war with themselves, and they were emotionally connected to it. And
it's our nature.
When it's somebody else, so what does that? Did you tend to get in a bidding war with yourself when you did the estimating? Like, we don't need to.
Worst enemy. Oh, it was terrible. But it's interesting when you set a guideline for somebody else and you say, listen, this is the standard. This is the amount of money we need to make. This is what it takes. It's purely by the numbers, right? You got to run your business by the numbers. You're only profitable by the numbers. So you run it by the numbers, but then you're the knucklehead who compromises your estimates because you feel like you need that project. You do not need that project. Oh man, that was a rough one to get over. And so, yes, having someone else in there, and even to the point where I remember when I first started reviewing the estimates that somebody else was doing, I'd be, well, I don't know, do we really have, how about we, and he'd look at me and go, but we know we can't build it for that. Like, we have to charge that, right? I mean, like, look, this is what this is going to cost. And I'm like, oh, geez, okay, all right, you're right. And I was surprised more and more so how many times, well, in the end, if you, how would I say, there's a little psychology too when you're going to your client and instead of going there with this apologetic attitude, like, yeah, I did the best I could to try to get this number down as low as I could for you or whatever. It's like, oh, I'm really sorry. It's like hogwash. Like, this is what it takes. I know what our numbers are. This is what it takes to run a business. I want to provide a service for you and we'd love to help you out. And this is what it costs. It is what it is. Even your attitude now that you're not estimating and you're looking at it from the numbers, if you're the one presenting it to the client and you're looking at it from a purely this is what it is mindset, and you love to help them, but you don't have to help them at a loss because you're not in the business of losing, you're in the business of making a profit. And interestingly enough, from the client's vantage point, and I say this to clients, like, you don't want me to lose money. Because if we are not a profitable business, we will not be here to back up our work. You want to know that we are a business that's going to be around for decades, generations, so that you know that you can count on us not only to complete our work, but to stand behind it and even be able to return and do further work in the future because you've established a trusted relationship with a builder and you don't have to go through this again. But that requires us to be profitable. Like any business, like how many of us have been to that favorite restaurant and then went to go there again and they closed and you're brokenhearted. You're like, they had the absolute best pulled pork sandwich I have ever had. And now I don't get to have it ever again because they didn't run their business well. So I tell the client that. I'm telling you that. You need to run a business that's profitable for your sake of your clients as well as yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. How about this? How important is the pre-construction phase to profitability?
That is a trick question. You're baiting me, Todd. The reality is it is arguable, and I've seen this debate, but it's arguable that it's actually more important than anything else. And it seems counterintuitive, and I know one of the questions you've asked me before, and it's probably in here, but I'm going to answer it now, is like the most counterintuitive reality about running your business successfully and doing well is recognizing that the pre-construction is arguably more important than the execution. The execution is just simply the end result of you doing all the work you do. I mean, when you go to build a rocket, the rocket, once they launch the rocket, it's in autopilot. It is going to go do whatever you built or programmed it to do. Execution is like that. All the real work went into building that rocket, designing that rocket, checking the processes, putting everything in place, getting ready to say, countdown to 0 and launch, because that's what it boils down to. Then it's the process. Just run it. Run the rocket. Send it into orbit. Okay?
Speaking of that, I was in Cape Canaveral. Spent a couple of days with a client who has an office there, and went to a restaurant and sat at the bar to have dinner, and a lady sat down next to me, and it turns out she is a rocket scientist, a real-life rocket scientist, and she was working on a project to send a satellite, basically. I'm not sure what it would be called, but sending a satellite to go check out one of the moons of Saturn. Okay. And it's a 10-year, $5 billion project or something. And I asked her, so how important, I said, what can you do after you launch that rocket? And she said, not much. We can do some software updates, maybe. And it made me think, if a rocket were handled like a typical construction project, it would be cobbled together. We would have people like strapped to the side of the rocket to try to fix the problems. It's like, let's do just enough to get this sucker off the ground. And then, you know what? We're not even sure if we need a rocket yet. So let's not do any planning. And then let's cobble it together, the low price as possible. We'll probably lose 4 or 5. We may never get out of the atmosphere, but it really made me think, what if we would handle our project launches like a rocket launch, how much smoother would the operations side be? But I think that's the problem, is this deficiency in pre-construction. And you're exactly right. It's so counterintuitive that the most important part of your construction project is actually the pre-construction part. So for people who are like, I don't know about that, guys, what would you tell them, for those people who think, man, money is made in the field. That's where we make our money. It's not in the office. What would you say to those guys who don't see or believe the value of pre-construction?
That's a tough one, because I remember being in that mindset. And when you're there, you have a hard time seeing outside of it. And I get it. I understand. I mean, I spent most of my early part of my career, out there in the field, and we've been out there working, and that's where we understand the money is made, right? We're going to go out there and work, get the job done, make our money because we went in there and did the job. That's the mental connection. But the rocket is such a beautiful example. If I told you that once you launch your construction project, you don't get to touch it again. You get to monitor it remotely. You get to communicate back and forth with what's going on there. Maybe some minor, setting changes, but you just have to watch the process happen. And if I told you that the real profitable, well-executed construction project looks like that, you'd have a hard time believing it until I showed it to you. But the reality is your clients actually end up with a better end product when you and your leadership team have the mental and physical space to observe your project going and getting executed rather than flying by the seat of your pants and making decisions as they come to you. Those are not how the most excellent projects happen. And I just walked a $5 million home that's only 3 years old, and we are taking it all the way back to the studs because that project was built by the seat of their pants. And it not only missed it on the construction defect side, but even the quality of workmanship, right down to missing what the client wanted. Fundamentally, I was flabbergasted at how much what the client actually missed. And this client is now going to be, there's litigation involved, but millions of dollars spent to get it actually right, when it really should have just been a rocket that was launched and executed. But so much of it was obviously decided as they were going. It's not fair to your clients.
But no, it's really, we call it the just enough to start trap. We'll do just enough to get started, right? And that is a trap that 90% of small businesses are stuck in. I managed a $30 million office building project for a Fortune 50 company, and it started off in the just enough to start trap, and it was a nightmare for 15 months because we started off trying to fast track a project, doing just enough to start. And it's the root cause of so many problems. So what I've been telling people is think about a really successful construction company that you admire. They're growing, doing big projects, new trucks, whatever. They look profitable. They're doing well. There's a pretty good chance they're actually a great pre-construction company. That's why they're so successful. They're a great pre-construction company masquerading as a construction company. But most people think, oh, they're great in the field. They're superintendents, they're crews, they're project managers. That's important, but you can make all of their jobs a lot easier by taking time and doing the pre-launch or the pre-construction better. I really think that's a missing piece for so many people. First of all, like as you pointed out, they're looking out there for the problems, and they're also looking out there for the solutions. But then they're also looking in the construction phase for the solutions, and the solution is actually upstream in the pre-construction phase. So I'm curious, I think you had a pretty good pre-construction process before we started working together, but what have been some of the results you've seen from fine-tuning your pre-construction process?
Well, honestly, we went from a company that was just barely paying our bills to, we're now at a gross revenue of over 4 million. And we have a definitely a respectable net profit And that's, right where we ought to be as a business. I'm very pleased. We have, I'm to the point where I have so much fewer hours that I have to put into my work. I very, very little time do I have to actually spend there. I'm able to invest all of that in my clients and making sure they're getting what they need, and my team members are understanding their roles well. And all of that really is the reality is, instead of making these decisions, which take so much more time and make so much more error, when you refine it and have a process that everybody is following, we are all actually happier because everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And we're just working through the details. But even the details, as we go along, the details get further and further refined and less ambiguous, or, we'll have to figure out when we get to that. Do we really? Let's dig into it. Is there some part of that we can't document or learn about or get prepared for? Thinking about like a handoff meeting. Are we sure we have to wait till we're actually on site to talk about that and get that nailed down? No. So much of that could get nailed in the handoff, And so a lot of that refinement, and I think also a big part was I had a lot of processes that were living in my head that needed to get documented. So just the hard work of documenting processes and then letting those processes run, and then discovering, oops, I guess there was a part of that process I still hadn't documented. It's okay, let's document some more, or refining it. I would say we're always refining. I mean, our attitude, we have a growth attitude here. We're constantly learning. We're constantly growing. That's how we stay at the front of our game and at the top of the competition. I like to say we're not a business that competes for work, yet we always remain very competitive because that's our attitude towards how we do things. We always want to be on the top tier of how we go about what we do. And the processes are the only way to document that. If you haven't written it down, you have no way to track your progress. And that's why some people say, well, I don't know what to write down yet. I don't have a really refined. Write something down. Start getting it down and grow from there. It doesn't have to be perfect to get you started. I think that's a pivotal thing too. Often is like, well, I'm not sure I got it worked out. I got to make it perfect. Well, that's not how you do anything. Start with a rough draft. But once you have a written rough draft, now you have something to edit. You have something to refine. Write down your not perfect process. I think that's what I'd say. Start by writing your not perfect process down. And that gives you a home.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference in mindset that holds people back, because when you build something in the field, it has to be right the first time. Mm-hmm. It has to be perfect. Otherwise, you're introducing risk, and there could be life safety issues and risks to your company and all sorts of problems. But when you're building processes, that's a very different mindset. You have to get it going. You don't have to get it perfect. You don't even have to get it right. You just have to get it going. Something is better than nothing. And it's this iterative mindset. We're going to start somewhere, and it's probably never going to be finished.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not. It will get continuous improvement. Less work on it. There is definitely a curve to it, but I mean, it is so counterintuitive to a lot of people, and especially as builders, it is counterintuitive to put something down, to take actionable on something that's not what you think you're going to sign I'm not signing my life to that. That looks terrible. That's not this process. So this is actually learning to do something very different than the way we're used to doing things.
Yeah. So from a quantifiable results, it sounds like profits up, revenues up. You've grown your team. Mm-hmm. How big is your team now?
We have 12 working here. When I started working with you, there was 2 people.
Okay. So significant changes there. What are some of the results that can't necessarily be measured? Some of the changes. What's different that you can't really put a number to, but is significant?
I was to the point where I was so stressed about my clients getting the results that they needed and having projects go the way they were. I mean, there were many, many days where I just was not sleeping. I just couldn't sleep. All the different things I was trying to keep in my head, I was trying to process and make sure got taken care of, and didn't want anything to fall through the cracks. I just needed it all to come out perfect, right? And without the written process, without the team, without recognizing that some of those things I had to let go of, I needed more qualified people to help me execute well. It was really, really hard. Some hard times there. And then without a good way of tracking where our numbers are from a revenue maximizer standpoint, I really didn't know where we really were financially. It was just not a really clear picture for a projection of the future and how to even set some bars for where we are and where we should be, so that we're a reasonably profitable company, and that's what any company should be established as. And then just freedom of time, and that freedom of time has been interesting. It's not only been a personal benefit, but it's been a benefit to my team. It's been a benefit to my clients, because it allows me to step back and see some things that aren't seen without a little bit of space to see them. Whether you're talking about how things really are going to come across for a client, or how the end result will be, or for my team having an investment in them and knowing where they're going and their future and their growth and their learning, and helping them find their unique abilities and apply them, either within our organization or even out of it, just to help them do that. Has been huge. And then now I'm working on a lot of energy focused on help in the community. I work a lot with youth arts program, trying to help young people really connect with their unique abilities at a young age. Who am I? What am I really enjoying, good at? And then I'm also trying to establish it's in infancy, just some training program. I'm really trying to come up with something that's boots on the ground for young people who are caught in this gap between what they're not getting from the high schools today and what they won't get from college. And we really don't have good qualified trade schools, certainly in our area. So I'm trying to see what I can do to help fill that gap for our industry. But you got to have the freedom to do that. You got to have the space to be able to start doing that and investing back into the world around you. So that's been a real joy for me.
Yeah. Very nice. Before we hit record, you said it's a little surreal for you.
It really is.
Where you're at right now. Can you explain that? What is surreal about it?
I was, I guess, content to continue to work my butt off and labor and ultimately break down my body for my family and to do what I needed to do. And I was willing to accept that, and didn't know, I was going to accept that I would never really have any measure of finances to do anything really with. And, freedom was fine. I was going to work, and then someday I was going to die working, and accept these kind of things. And these are some paradigms that you get stuck in, and I was accepting that. But the fact that what's surreal is that I am at a place where I own, and I was going to say, I don't really run. I used to say I have a construction company and I work, and then I run a construction company. Well, I think a more accurate statement is I own a construction company, and I'm responsible for its guidance and direction and leadership. But running it, I actually have somebody who runs it for me. And so that is just surreal to have the freedom to be able to spend the time I want with my family, to the time that is whatever's necessary to help the success of the different categories I've mentioned before, but the people who work for me, my clients, and just the community around me. I really want to see them thrive and do well. And so that's just been great to have the freedom to be able to do that. And I have adult children, and having the freedom, to go see them, to be with my children, which was the point of having this business. The point of being able to work was, I really just want to be with my kids, and to be able to go, yes, honey, that's fine. Next week, we're going to go see Elias. I can do that. I don't have to figure out, well, what do I do, because I'm the only person responsible. And you think about it from a client standpoint. I need to take care of my clients. I'm not about to just bail on them. So here I am having to choose in the past between, do I go see my son, or do I make sure that my client's bathroom comes out right, or that they get the siding they're supposed to? Now I don't have to. I actually know for a fact I have people in place doing a better job with the siding than I ever did. They're doing it better than me. And that's exciting to know. And that while they're doing it, I'm going to be visiting my son. That is surreal.
So what are some of the things you're excited about in the future?
I'm excited about seeing other people like myself just come to that awakening. I'm more than willing to help others, to have conversation too. But I mean, I may not always be very easy about it. I will probably point right at the thing that you don't want me to talk about. And I go, no, that's the problem right there. But I love to see that. I'm really excited about seeing we have a generational gap. We have a serious problem in the trades. We have a lot of people aging out and they're leaving, and there's just not anywhere near. I mean, that's not hard to find an article to read about. They're all over the place. We have a significant shortage in the trades, and that is going to hurt our country. That's going to hurt our communities, and people are going to end up hiring people unqualified. And I have a passion for bridging that gap by helping some. I mean, I have a lot of different people who work for me who have had struggles educationally, wherever it may be, and to help them bridge that gap to becoming qualified professional tradesmen, to where they have freedom and they have the ability to provide good service for clients and provide well for their families, is a very exciting thing for me to do. And as well as in all of that, still have the freedom to be able to be with my family, and that's it. That's where it's at for me.
Nice. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, and let's talk about the CEO Alliance. You are one of the founding members of the CEO Alliance. So how would you describe the CEO Alliance in your own words, and what has being a member of that group done for you?
It's a catalyst. I think that I thought about this a little bit before, and I have many times, because it has been a profound impact. And I would say never underestimate the power of good accountability and camaraderie. At the end of the day, we're all but humans with basic needs to be recognized, encouraged, and occasionally prodded. And all of that we experienced in the CEO Alliance, but we experienced it with people who were going through and are going through the same things that we are, even if they're in a different location. In fact, having a different location, a different perspective, slightly different businesses was actually a benefit, because you could see it from different angles and realize it's different, but it's the same. And having people who knew you. I mean, we're now at a point, and we went through an evolution. And I spoke to some of the guys, and some of you will probably listen to it, and I'm repeating myself, but like, you get to a point in the CEO Alliance where we've talked about the same things, and it's not a matter of bringing up a new subject anymore. It's now actually transitioning to a place where there's relational accountability. I've known you long enough. I've seen where you've come from, and I have the platform because I've been there for you. You've been there for me, and I'm going to tell you, stop. You've reverted back to a bad habit. I love you. Don't do that to yourself. I know you better than that. You're better than that. You can do this, right? And being there for each other at the next level is just immeasurable. Can't even explain what that does. And countless times, when whether it be a live call and then getting together in person was a catalyst for me personally, a catalyst for each one of the major roadblocks that was inside my head or inside of my inability to get off of top dead center. Was having those other team members go, we're there too, and we're with you, and let's do it together. And how are you progressing? How are you doing? Let's talk about it. Did you not make it this week? That's okay. Let's talk about how we can all talk together. We're going to work together to help Mikhail get past his roadblock. And then we're going to talk to one of the other team members and go, hey, all right, okay, your goals, sure, we'd love it if you met your goals, but you didn't meet your goals. How can we help you meet them? Let's do it. Right. Huge.
Yeah. So speaking of goals, what are a couple of goals that you're focused on right now? What's on your list for the next 12 months?
For me, I actually have a desire to spend some time in the mission field, and I'd like to be able to be in a place where I know that everything is going along excellently. I actually don't. I say that specifically because I don't want to be away from my business and have it survive. Oh, it did okay. I came back and I put the piece. No, I want to be away from it and find out that it was doing incredible. And this is fantastic. We're doing great. And I want to be able to spend a little bit of time doing that. I also have this crazy hairband, what is it? The big, hairy, audacious ideas. Like big, hairy, audacious goal. I have this big, hairy, audacious goal that I can help create an educational process or driven program for this gap, this educational gap that we have between young men and women who don't realize that they could do well or may want to get into the trades, but all they have is online educational programs, which are great and are well suited for some, but there's an enormous group of people who do not know how to learn well, and they need help learning how to learn, and they need hands-on training. And I'm just starting this. And honestly, anybody, if you've got some ideas, shoot them to me. I would want to see this happen. Obviously, I'm driven that it's a very locally oriented reality, but at some point I want to create something that can be duplicated anywhere, so that there's localized training. There's a regrouping. I mean, I realize there's trade schools out there, but I think a lot of them have become way too academically driven. They're looking much more like colleges than the hands-on trade reality that many of the group that I'm referring to need. They need somebody who's just going to come in there and hands-on, like it's all lab-oriented. There's no classes, there's labs, So anyway, we'll see how that goes, but that's something I'd like to pursue. And then of course we can just continue to refine how we help our clients. And I'm just thrilled with my team and just continuing to help them get better at what they do.
Nice. A couple of rapid fire questions. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what is something you believe to be true about business that some people might think is a little unconventional, maybe even a little crazy?
Well, I don't know that it's too unconventional, crazy, but I can't escape the fact that it's something my father told me years ago, but it told me to always focus on the relationships. Every business's success ultimately comes down to how they treat people. And you remember earlier I talked about commercial construction and how it's not. But even there, how you treat the people will significantly determine how that project goes. It is an intangible. It's even sometimes hard to put in numbers, but how you treat people. The people are the central the reality. We're full of humans. This is all human-driven realities we're dealing with. If you lose sight of the relationship side of what you're doing, you've missed it. This is not about 2x4s. It's about people.
That's a very good point. We don't do business with businesses. You do business with people, whether that's for a large commercial general contractor, working for a Fortune 50 company. Ultimately, you're going to be interacting with a person, not a business. It's great advice. All right, a couple of rapid fire questions. What's your number one book recommendation for entrepreneurs? What is one book they should absolutely order today as their 5-minute action item?
10x is easier than 2x.
Fantastic book. Next rapid fire question. What's your two-part question? If somebody's visiting your hometown, what is that hometown? And then what is the restaurant or bar that they cannot miss while they're in town?
Templeton, California. And I would send you to McPhee's in downtown. Order yourself an old-fashioned.
Okay. It's hard to go wrong with a good old-fashioned. Right. Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. So you've got an audience of a few thousand people. Anything else? Any advice you'd want to share with them, Mikhail, before we wrap up?
It's inescapable that the people are the center of what we do, but it bears to mind that in the midst of all this, one of the greatest gifts has been my wife through all of this. And one of the most powerful fruits of the CEO Alliance has actually been a better personal business relationship with her, and watching that grow and us being on the same page in that has been immeasurable, an incredible gift that I would have never, ever fathomed that would have come out of that. And as we've spent many hours praying over our clients and our team members and where we're going, and appealing to the Lord to give us guidance, being able to do that in a very tangible and real way with Kina has been amazing. And so I'm very, very, very thankful for that. And I would just encourage all of you, husbands and wives, some of you aren't, but if you are married, when you get to this point in a business where you see yourself and you're targeting being a CEO, these are goals and things that cannot be done autonomously. You really need to recognize that as a husband and wife, this is something you're doing together. And it is incredibly joyful to use that as a catalyst for bringing the two of you together. So I strongly encourage that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Last question. If people want to connect with you, apply for a job, get in touch with you about a project, follow you on social media, where are some of the best places for them to go?
You can reach me directly at Mikhail at GannageConstruction.com. That's Michail, and I'm sure you'll post it on here. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram. Both of those are places where you can follow some of the stories. I love to journal the stories of our projects. You can follow those and see how we do that. That's a lot of fun. If you're interested in some of the follow-up on some of the things that I shared, you're welcome to email me. I'd love to help you out. So,
fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure watching you and your company grow over the past several years. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and Kina and hanging out in person at our events. And really appreciate your generosity. You're always very generous at live meetups, generous with your time. when it comes to other CEO Alliance members. And I appreciate your time and your generosity with what you shared today. So thanks,
You're
Mikhail.
welcome. Thank you, Todd. It was a joy, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Hey, Todd here. Before you go, thanks for listening. If you get value out of this podcast, if you could leave a rating or a review on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you consume this content, that would be great. And then if you are tired of waking up in the middle of the night, thinking about project details, worrying about cash flow, if you're tired of being stuck in day-to-day operations, putting out fires, if you're tired of not having enough documented processes and systems in your business, if you're tired of being hammered by the just enough to start trap, and if you feel stuck, if you want to grow your business and you want to know the right process to do it, if you want to have a roadmap to follow and a proven system for that, then there's a 5-step process to systematize your construction business. And the team here at Construction Leading Edge specializes in that. That's exactly what we do. And we've helped over 300 companies do just that. If you would like our help, if you'd like to talk about what that looks like, the first step is to go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, or you can go to our website, constructionleadingedge.com, and tap the Apply Now button, or you can simply send a text with the word apply to this number, 877-755-2410. Just send a text with the word apply to 877-755-2410, and my team will get back in touch with you. Thanks for listening. See you next time.